when you break that stereotype that they've had, when they can actually now not look at a piece of paper or statistics, but actually see an individual, a person, then things begin to change.
Our nation has been having a harsh reality check when it comes to the idea of race relations. Racism is no longer something that we can turn a blind eye to. And unfortunately, even in the church, even as Seventh-day Adventists, we're not immune to this. Being a Seventh-day Adventist, after all, does mean that you're human and you are prone to making mistakes. And so with communities all around the world discussing what does it look like to have healthier race relations? What does it look like to learn from the other side? I decided to sit down with my friend Garth and ask him what has his experience been like as a Black Seventh-day Adventist.
It brings back so many memories, just in hearing that question.
Good memories, bad memories?
I guess both. And it starts out when, I grew up in a predominantly Black church. The community was predominantly Italian. A lot of my friends were Italian and are Italian. But then being in a Black church just gave identity, belonging, because being in an environment where everything around you is different, is white, then that was a safe haven for me.
Church was
the safe haven.
Where was this at?
This is in Toronto.
In Toronto, okay.
And it was a safe haven, really, because I was able to express myself, able to grow, be involved with individuals who were like me. Whereas, I was the only Black kid in the school, and that posed some challenges in the area where we were. So for me, that brought back some good memories. Being Black in the church just brought community, where we were able to grow, be able to share. We had some fun times together, play together. Those folks will always be like family to me, no matter where we are in the world right now. And many of us have, become pastors or leaders in the church and are still in close contact with each other, which I thought was just remarkable, that in one church, in one city, that we can now be all over the world. So that brought back a lot of great memories to be Black in the church, in the Adventist church. I didn't go to church school, but many of them did, until later on. So that was quite different, to be in an environment that was outside the public school system. I thought that was very unique, to have that experience. I went to Oakwood University, and that was my first Adventist Christian education experience. And that just highlighted even more a positive experience of being Black in the Adventist church. To see that it was not just a community in Toronto, but also having a community that's really worldwide, and seeing all the flags on the campus, the representation from all over the world just gave me a different outlook, that I was really not alone. Because it can be very isolated as a Black man in the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Yeah. And
that just brought, I guess, some of the negative experiences that I've been through throughout the church, that just, even as a pastor, that speaks to the uniqueness and sometimes the plight of being SDA and being Black.
Garth is the kind of guy who loves people and loves God. And as a result, he actually entered into the pastoral ministry. But as you would know, there are also stories of being a Black pastor in America and how this can actually mean for some hard times. So I asked Garth to share what were those experiences like and what did he learn from it?
There were some very negative experiences, but one I want to highlight is, I guess it started off negative, but ended up being something very positive too. A learning experience for me. It's being in one of my first districts. I was placed in the church. I walked into the congregation, a multicultural church. Standing at the front door, of that church, and a lady came out, a member of the congregation, influential member, a leader in the church, actually, a board member, and looked at me and said, "They sent you here?" And I, after a while, being a black man, you're like, well, what does she mean? I want to give the benefit of the doubt. What does she mean by that?
Yeah.
They sent
maybe
you.
just you were too young.
Yeah, maybe I'm young. Maybe I'm inexperienced because I'm still new. And then she pointed to the pictures on the wall, and I knew what she meant then because every picture on the wall was of a white man. And then she looked at me. She looked up at the picture and she said, "They sent you here again." And this is in the line, my first day.
Wow.
I reached out to her and I said, "Yes, honey, they sent me here." And guess what? I'm here with you. And I pulled her towards me. And I know pastors are not supposed to do that, all that stuff. I broke all the rules. And I squeezed her. I grabbed her and I gave her a hug, a bear hug, and I squeezed her. And I said, "Yes, they sent me here."
Did she respond well to that, or?
She kind of shrugged, it's tense stuff, of course. But it brought back a memory to me of that experience.
Yeah.
But not only that, later on, it was 2 years later or so, she had an illness and was on her deathbed in the hospital. And I was the only one to visit her. I stood by her bedside till the very last moments. But before she passed away, she looked at me. She was in a lot of pain. She grabbed my hand. She looked into my eyes and she said, "I'm so sorry." And at first,
she knew that you knew what she was referring to right away.
I knew, but ever so often you try to kind of shrug it away, like, "Oh, it's okay, it's fine. It's let bygones be bygones." And she says, "No, it wasn't okay. I'm so sorry for the way that I treated you."
Wow.
And I look back on that moment. I held her hand until the last. Those moments, I think, are impactful to me. It's hurtful.
For sure.
When I think back, it brings back a lot. But it shows that some of those experiences, I'm not the only one who has gone through things like that, but it just brings back a whole lot of emotion. Those things drive me to tears sometimes when I think back at it. But I know that we have a long way to go as a church.
In my conversations with my black friends and colleagues in the church, it turns out that his experience isn't unique. This is something that has happened to nearly every one of my friends in ministry. So what do we do about this? How do we make things better? Well, we're gonna have to start by tearing down these racial prejudices, these preconceived ideas and stereotypes of who people are.
I think it's easy to judge someone without knowing them, without getting even, going off stereotypes. And I think for like that lady in the congregation and many others, they have stereotypes that they have labeled. This is the black man. This is how he's going to respond. This is what we expect. This is what society tells us they're going to do. And when you break that stereotype that they've had, when they can actually now not look at a piece of paper or statistics, but actually see an individual, a person, then things begin to change. It's now not just looking afar or typing behind on a keyboard behind a screen, but actually knowing someone, having a relationship with the person. Individuals talk about, well, black men are like this. How many black men do you know? Like, seriously, how many black men? And when I say no, I mean, how many black men do you actually say, I can go to their home, I can relax, I can talk with their family, or I know their experience, I know what they've been through, I know where they work. And there are not many people who do that. So they continue to live this life of isolation and have these models in their minds that they have set up, and these stereotypes that are prevailing in their minds without ever getting to know the person. And I think once they're able to break down, those barriers will fall once they know the individual. And I think for that church member, what happened in between is actually taking time to get to know them. It went beyond, breaking down the barrier to say, you know what, in spite of your racism, I can still hug you. And I can still be there next to you. I can still walk with you. I can still hold your hand. I can still talk with you and have conversations with you. And then in that whole process, those type of stereotypes that have been built up over the years will be broken down.
All people are created in God's image. This is a truth that we as Seventh-day Adventists that we've affirmed for many, many years. Red and yellow, black and white, all are precious in His sight, as the song goes. We're going to pause our conversation here with Garth, and in our next episode, we're going to talk about the idea of protest and where does this fit in the life of Christians, and specifically in the life of Seventh-day Adventists. So if you've had questions about this, definitely stay tuned for our next conversation.